Well, hello and a very warm welcome to this episode of On the Spot, the 15-minute coffee break shaped conversation about all things business analysis, business change related, and much more besides. And I'm really pleased to say that today we're joined by Mick Brian, who's into, again, all things business analysis, all things agile, all things changed. And Mick, you're speaking at the IRM BCT conference in May, and I was really interested to see the topic that you'd chosen, which was around agile change. And I suspect many people tuning in, that will be a phrase that is of real interest to them, because we're always being asked to do change, and we're always being asked to change quite quickly and in quite an agile fashion. So when I saw your presentation description, one of the things which really sprang to my mind was that balance between planning and agility, because sometimes there seems to be a tension between how much do we plan. And I wondered, what would you say are some of the challenges of planning change?
Well, I'll give a personal story. I've been in projects where you have to produce these 50-page change plans. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with doing that. There's a place for all that stuff, but I was just been involved in too many things now where you produce these massive change plans and then you realise that only one person sort of read it, and then you think, well, what was the point of doing that then? Because no one's it was part of a contract, or yes, there will be a change plan. And I think, when we're trying to plan things, we love to have like this level of certainty around stuff, don't we? So I think we have this thing, all right, the more we can plan, the more we can do and like really, really detail it out. Oh, well, I'm certain with what's going to happen. And we know that level of certainty is probably unfounded. When we're planning a holiday or something like that, we go into all this detail, and then COVID hits and you're not going on holiday anymore. So it's, I like to now, I've been working with agile teams, and I've just found I'm a lot more happier in knowing what I'm going to be able to actually do from a change perspective in a small period of time. And it just becomes a bit more real for people, I think, instead of like finger in the air 2 years out, and you probably really know that isn't what's going to happen.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because any plan is really just a best guess. And you talk about holidays, that's a really interesting analogy, isn't it? Because probably for most of us, we couldn't even accurately plan how long it's going to take us to drive to the airport, because that's a known distance. But depending on how much traffic, or whether there's snow or whatever. And I should say to anyone who is tuning in live, please do feel free to type in a question or comment, and we'll bring a few of those up as we go along as well. But do keep in mind that if you do type in a comment and we bring it up, it will have your name and your LinkedIn photo, if you have one, on the screen as well. So you talked about there, Mick, about about there not really being that certainty. Almost we crave certainty when there is when in reality there is no certainty. So to what extent would you say experimentation is important?
So this is where I think when you're experimenting in this way, you're getting early feedback. So you're sort of knowing what's potentially going to work. Oh God, that's not going to work. Let's not carry on then. And that actually, I think, then feeds into giving you a level of certainty. So, experimenting on things, and scientists have done it for years, isn't it? So actually being able to, I think the most important thing about that experimenting part is the early feedback. If you're going down the right path, and if you're not, you can do something about it instead of. And I'm pretty sure that people that are listening in have all been involved in projects like this. You head off down this road for 2 years, spend literally sometimes millions of pounds, and 6 months down the road, you're like, don't think this is going to work, but we can't stop it, so we've got to keep going and spend the money. And it's not worked. So yeah, that's the good thing about the experimental approach that I like. You're constantly course changing, and you're not blindly going in the wrong direction.
That's it. And I suppose also then not wedded to a particular approach. So there's the ability, almost that humble ability to accept we might be wrong. It's an experiment. We're not politically committed to it. It's, definitely. So we've got a really interesting question or comment from Lisa. So hi Lisa, glad you could tune in. And this is probably one we could talk about for hours. But what's your advice where you're agile but your third parties aren't and have a complex governance structure? Now I suspect we've all seen elements of this, but that could equally be where perhaps a team is agile, but the organisation has a governance structure which is almost anti-agile in some cases. Any tips on that one, Mick?
Yeah, so it's interesting because I did a course, which will probably come on to in a bit later, but around lean change, and it was run by a guy, absolutely brilliant guy. I'll call him out, Richard Atherton, he's called. And he was talking about this on the course because everyone loves to think that they're agile or the organization is agile, but when you get in there you realize it's not, and they want you to be doing this agile stuff, but when you then go to play it back, it's we've got all these structures. So he talks about almost playing back the agile stuff you may be doing in the background, but playing it back to them in the way that they're going to understand it. So you may be doing these things, these agile techniques, principles, using agile tools, but it's just how you play it back to fit in with the governance structure. But I think another thing that happens there is it's the people just thinking that, I'm just going to go in there and everything's going to be agile. And no one does the upfront part of, you go back to what agile is and you get the Agile Manifesto. Well, you've got to do about the mindset of wanting to work that way. And I don't think there's enough done around that before you start.
Yeah, that mindset and really in instilling it, because it's far more than just the approach, the methodology, isn't it? And actually that sort of broader change. Lynn added to the conversation that there is no certainty in mountains of paperwork and documentation other than it is probably wrong. And Lynn says, agree that experimentation and feedback is your best approach, and that is true, isn't it? There are many. Documentation or communication serves a purpose, and documentation is a way of communication, but documentation gets out of date very, very quickly. So it's that it's that fine balancing act. So Mick, are there any tools, techniques or canvases that you'd recommend in this whole conversation about agile change?
Yeah, so if you go on to like I say, go on to leanchange.org, I think it is. So the guy that came up with this methodology is Jason Little, and Richard runs that course in the UK. They've got loads of free stuff on there. I'm happy to post a link if that helps. Really, really interesting. Again, what they don't wed to one specific thing to use. And I think this is the thing that I like about stuff. There's excellent stuff in all different methodologies and all different models, and why we think we've just got to stick to one and see it through like it's a linear thing. And you can, you pick and choose what's right for what you're actually doing. So, to take ADKAR, for instance, that's part of a whole massive ProSci methodology, but you can take ADKAR and just use it on its own. So you've got the Cynefin framework, Dave Snowden. So he's prolific guy. I'm not even going to pretend that I know it in the level of what he does, being a complexity scientist and stuff. But you just look at the Cynefin model and you can think, well, when you're working in an agile way, most of the time you're working in the complex area, and that's all about probing and then sensing what's going on and responding to the situation. So even just knowing that little bit can sort of steer in. Well, hold on a minute, we're working in the wrong way here. We let's think about this. So there's if my colleague and friend Will was on the call, he's really into sort of all the neuroscience stuff. Again, I've got an interest in it. I am not a neuroscientist, but you can take things like the SCARF model from the Neuro Leadership Institute. It's all about status, certainty, autonomy, how you relate to people, fairness. even using those things in an agile way, you can, by the conversations people are talking about, you can think, that's all, the problems are around their status, or they're not certain what's going on. And I've been using loads of empathy mapping stuff in the work I've been doing.
Yeah.
It just doesn't focus on the solution.
I think that's a really important point, isn't it? Is actually a lot of what you've talked about there is problem and people and context. So Cynefin about sense making, about the complexity of the situation is so important. And I mean, really, really interesting stuff, Mick. If you were to drill what we've been talking about down to, and I know it's always hard, so one or a couple of biggest tips or takeaways, what would you, for people watching today, what would you want them to take away from this conversation?
So working in change, that's my profession, if you like, it's nothing to do with a tool or anything. It's don't sit in the background as a change professional, right? Because this doesn't apply to everyone, obviously, but I think there's too many people sitting in the background, and they're more worried about keeping the stakeholder map up to date, and keeping the documentation up to date, keeping the map. And whereas, if you're working in change and you're working in agile teams, go to the stand-ups, get involved in the retrospectives. I mean, that's what I do. How on earth are you really going to understand what's going on if you, as a change person, do not get involved in it, and you're sort of distant from the rest of the business? And then people just get tired with this. What do change people do again? And it's not helpful. You've got to get in there and actually prove that you're willing to do a bit of graft.
Yeah, actually there's that expression that get some skin in the game, and even if it's not as much skin in the game as it probably rarely will be, as those affected by it, actually developing the empathy with those people and taking the time. And as you say, the administration, the document, the physical creation of the document is probably less important than the conversations that have gone to get the information to create whatever artifact it is. So, well, brilliant. I mean, Mick, we're very, very nearly out of time. These are always such short sessions. I'm absolutely certain that people want to follow you, stay in touch with you. How can people find out more about you, about the topic, about CMC? How can people connect?
So obviously, I'm on LinkedIn. That's hands up. That's probably the only social media you'll probably find. I have got a Facebook, but I'm 50 next month. I feel like I'm getting too old. So you'll definitely find me on LinkedIn. You'll find out about the conference on there, what I'm talking about. So at the conference, it's going to be interactive. It's all going to be done on Mural, so showing what can be done in a distributed sort of environment. And CMC's got a website you can go on to find any more about me as well. So drop by all means, if anybody wants a conversation, just drop me a line on LinkedIn. I'm more than happy to keep the conversation going with anyone. That'd be great.
Fantastic. Well, excellent. Well, thanks very much, Mick. Just before we close, we've actually got a comment. You were mentioning your colleague Will, who has put a comment in just to confirm. Luckily, it's agreeing with you. Will says you're so right. The neuroscience is revealing, and from a change point of view, would really support a lean, agile approach. But another person that, if you get the chance to see, if anyone's watching, you get the chance to see Will present, I would highly recommend that. I saw a presentation of his about clean language actually at the BCT conference last year, and I can still remember huge amounts of it now. And if you can remember a presentation a year later, that's got to be a good sign. So, well, we've just about hit the time. So all that's left for me to say, Mick, is a massive thank you for taking the time out to have a chat today. Also, to everyone who's tuned in live, whether you're watching this live or indeed the recording, thank you very much. Do remember that you can go onto the website, which is onthespot.today. So if you go to onthespot.today, you can see previous episodes and transcripts